Here in Twisted Metal 4, we have seen vehicles of all shapes and sizes. But we may not have realized that those are actually relevant statistics to the vehicle's effectiveness in combat. Especially size, which will be very obvious when we play as the game's smallest vehicle, Microblast.
It is time to show the world who truly is her master! After this tournament, I shan't be overlooked anymore. Why, I'll be up in the sky! It'll be me for sure who will be overlooking all these poor souls below me.
That less than half-hearted Irish accent may not be the best introduction to this little character, but we did learn that his size is one of his greatest neuroses, but also his greatest strength, because his stats are pretty pathetic and his special weapon is awful. But we'll see it all here in the bedroom. Get everyone amped, break the lamp. Our killing machines, which were just driving down the highway a moment ago, are now scrambling across the floor of an edgy teenager's bedroom. Somehow. This is where the logic of the game has completely left us, never to return. I'm not actually complaining. I fully support this game going completely off the deep end, not even attempting to offer an explanation for what the hell is going on. The more you think about it, the more confusing it gets, so just don't think about it. I even selected this strange non sequitur of a vehicle to accentuate the absurdity of it all. Microblast is driving a wind-up toy car, and his game manual description gives him much more character than his in-game bio does. He is the former holder of the title World's Strongest Elf, and from there he became one of the minions of Sweet Tooth, like the ones we've had shouting and gesticulating at us when we win the contest. Sweet Tooth noticed his megalomaniacal aspirations and offered him the opportunity to compete in the contest himself, his prize being the total domination of the entire globe. And all that information you can immediately forget, because his ending is going to neglect all that. It's not in the game, so it doesn't count. Just forget that the game has a manual. However, the manual does state that this is Sweet Tooth's bedroom, and that much does seem to be canon. There are numerous indicators that Sweet Tooth does own the place and did choose the decoration. That is the best explanation I've seen anyway, for the fact that there are bloody handprints all over the place, crude drawings, and cans of gasoline. And exploding those gas cans will open up new areas in the level, as will driving up the Hot Wheels tracks. This is nowhere near as absurdly oversized as the highway was, but it is still a very, very large area to explore. I've used up most of my good ammo, so it is time to do that exploration. See what we can find here inside the walls of the bedroom. Like underneath the bed. It's honestly too dark to even tell where the hell I am. And the camera does not like this area, it's too cramped. All I can really see is the pickups, so I make a beeline for those. And then sort of get the hell out of here. But there is good stuff down here. A Rain 2 missile, our full health pickup, auto lobbers, and some mortars that I don't even bother with. And then this section over here, also blocked by destructible walls, is part of another secret area. That plug back there has got to be a real pain to get to, because it is inside a wall. The teleporter therein has gotten us on top of the bed, so now we can see what it's like up here in the upper level. There are a lot of posters around, and wooden planks attaching the bed to the nightstand, just in case anyone wants to have a Twisted Metal competition in Sweet Tooth's bedroom. He's ready for it. Prepared for anything, that guy. There's even a small CRT TV all the way over the dresser. And unfortunately, it cannot be destroyed. That's one of the things that is severely lacking in Twisted Metal 4, I find. Destructibles. Even Twisted Metal 3 would have allowed you to blow up that TV. But no. In this game, there are secret areas. Not so many things that you can destroy just for the hell of it. This lamp is one of the things you can destroy, sort of for the hell of it. But as the loading screen hint indicated, it is where we actually get the environmental attack. So look at the sexy poster, the poster of other Twisted Metal competitors, from Twisted Metal 3 specifically. Turns out, Sweet Tooth is a gigantic fan of Twisted Metal 3, and no other game in the series. That's probably because that's the only game they had the rights to use the imagery from, but I like to think it's them intentionally insulting the single-track developers, because the single-track devs certainly made it clear that they were unhappy with Twisted Metal 3. Here's our environmental attack. It is unimpressive, but it does originate from nowhere. Strike the center of the arena. It will also fire from some of the electrical outlets, but not all of them. So better to just lure everyone to the center and try and shock them there. We also happen to have 90 uses of our special, which is just speed missiles. You hold the fire button, you fire a million tiny missiles with no homing and very poor damage. Only difference is there's a very irritating sound effect every time you hit the fire button. So worse than speed missiles. A terrible special, probably the worst one in the whole game. That leaves Microblast with a very poor damage output, because the picked up weapons tend to do pretty poor damage on their own. And he makes up for it by having just the tiniest hitbox any Twisted Metal game has ever seen in any vehicle. It is impossible to hit this thing. You can stand still, and the enemy still will have a tough time getting you. And fighting Microblast is a nightmare. He just scuttles around, impossible to hit, completely harmless, but just super irritating. Luckily, we don't have to do that, but we will many, many times later on. Quattro tried to save himself by going invisible. Never seems to work, although it's effective at confusing you as the player. Just gotta keep track of that radar and try and set them on fire when they're invisible, because then you can just see them perfectly. He was the last enemy, summoning the boss, RC Car. And with these two toy vehicles battling in a bedroom setting, it's like some kind of, I don't know, what would you call it? Maybe a small brawl? This was another idea that the original Twisted Metal developers would use as the basis for an entire game later on. Just 2 years later, in fact, and after they made it clear that they had so much contempt for the 989 developers, we're just going to add this to the list of ideas that they didn't think was so bad. And those single-track developers did have specific contempt for the 989 developers that they made known at the time. They actually contacted 989 and told them, we're going to make a game that's going to bury Twisted Metal 3 because you're ruining our series. And there was a fan group called the Twisted Metal Alliance, founded specifically out of hatred for Twisted Metal 3, which the single-track developers directly supported that group and gave them all sorts of inside information, worked closely with them. It was a real hate campaign against 989 for doing their jobs against horrible deadlines and inadequate resources. 989 ended up agreeing that Single-Track's revenge game, Rogue Trip, was better than Twisted Metal 3. It had the superior Twisted Metal 2 engine, and much, much, much better level design. 989 did feel like they had been bested, and I do think that informs a lot of their decisions in Twisted Metal 4, making this game so weird, so anti-Twisted Metal in every way, with so many creative ideas that were actually really, really good, and sort of got stolen and incorporated into more popular Twisted Metal games later on down the line, which are more highly respected. You know what, I'm even going to give 989 credit for being the first to incorporate generic bottom-tier nu metal bands that no one's ever heard of into the game soundtrack, which Twisted Metal Head-On would later do when they licensed the band Level. For this level, the soundtrack is provided by a band called Ghoul Spoon. Bunch of nobodies from Hawaii originally, and they were actually doing proto-nu metal as early as 1991, which is before Korn even popularized the whole thing, made it into the fad that it quickly became. But Ghoul Spoon didn't end up doing anything particularly interesting with it, ended up sounding extremely derivative by the time they actually got some albums out, and didn't really go anywhere. They opened for many of the big bands, but that was their role, the eternal opener. But we'll talk some more about this song a little later on. For now, I have to confess that this boss is giving me a really, really hard time. Almost killed me several times over. RC Car is among the harder bosses. Its special is a laser beam that does quite a bit of damage and sets you on fire. He's very good at hitting you with it, even when we're tiny like Microblast. And his own hitbox is very strangely shaped, making him pretty hard to peg. But eventually we got him. We've now increased our ranking for the first time. And this ending screen indicates what ranking you played the entire level on. So, this whole experience was about 5% more difficult than the previous levels. I'm sure you noticed. Looks like next time we'll be heading for the familiar area of Amazonia, with a slight twist. And a slight twist is also what I would expect from the ending we're about to watch.
Microblast, you've shown an enormous capacity for succeeding, leaving not a small trace of doubt in the mind of any spectator of the tournament that you are largely, by a giant margin, the biggest champion of the Twisted Metal competitions.
Arrgh! Enough! I've come here for me wish.
Microblast, it is not our intent to belittle you.
Why, Iota?
Very well, we'll keep this short. Through Sweet Tooth's kind and courteous heart, you will be given one wish. What is your desire?
I want to be torn, like a skyscraper. I want people to look up at me with fear. I want it so my shadow falls upon an entire city, and I want it now, for an eternity.
Your wish has been granted, driver. Bye!
Microblast, you fool. Should've known that if you're big for too long, you turn to stone. That's why Tom Hanks had to turn back at the end of that movie. I assume. I never saw it. Actually, that was an ironic punishment for wishing to be big eternally. The superfluous final line of his wish is what ended up screwing him over. A fitting punishment for so irritating a car. This game's Club Kid. That's all behind us. Now we get to go play the bonus level that we unlocked. Octagon. We'll take 5 enemies because, as we're about to see, it doesn't matter. We could take 100 enemies and we could still trounce them all in this particular level. The extremely simple visual design of all these bonus levels gives you exactly as much information as you need to know what to expect. So the blue floors are just safe drivable ground. Red indicates death pits. Now we're gonna see what green and yellow mean. Not immediately though. First we gotta go around and grab every single pickup so that we can fight back against enemies. Not so much to damage them, just to control their locations and really just sort of keep our hands busy while we are waiting for things to happen. So, the green we've actually seen in the main game, it's the pools of acid, or goo, or whatever, which is to say, it's flammable. And our special happens to be one of the things that can ignite it and set out the ring of flame that sets everybody on fire. You gather a bunch of enemies in that pool and you set it alight, you will slow the game down to single-digit frames. You have to wait like 10 seconds before you can even move again. This might be the single worst spot in the whole game for potential slowdown. But we're not really going to see too much more of that. So while we're waiting to see what the yellow gimmick is, let's talk some more about the song from the level we just played, because it is playing right now. The bonus levels select a random track from the soundtrack, and this time they picked Ghoul Spoon. So the song is called Alien Magnet, and it is about illegal border immigration and how something needs to be done about it. So it's not a good song, musically or morally, but it does have a hilarious reggae breakdown, which was cut out of the version you hear in the game. It's one of several songs that was truncated for the in-game soundtrack, for whatever reason. Too bad, because it's kind of the best part of the song. And that's the last we ever need to talk about that. So, while I was talking, 2 of the enemies died. And we didn't do nearly enough damage to have killed them. They weren't even on screen when they died. What could have happened? Well, let's not worry about that now, and ignore the gigantic octagons that give the level its name. Let's just finish off Meter Maid. She's the second smallest vehicle after Microblast, and therefore the second most irritating. But pretty low armor, so we were able to finish her off with the machine gun, which is otherwise useless. And we've expended all of the pickups, so fortunately, another character died off screen. What is going on with this level? It is eating people alive. Like I said, we don't even have to play this one. It'll win itself soon enough. Just chase Mr. Zombie around, keep the pressure on him, and eventually he will graze the Octagon and it bounces him 1,000,000 miles away. The yellow indicates launch pads. You touch them, you gain a tremendous amount of velocity in the opposite direction. Some of them will be laid horizontally, but the vertical ones are designed to bounce you out of the level into the kill planes. They're very, very, very good at doing so. All but one of the kills was done by the Octagons. We didn't need to do anything. It's kind of a fun little level. Neat gimmick, anyway. And that concludes another step in our journey through Twisted Metal 4. We played as the worst vehicle, we heard the worst song on the soundtrack, and we fought one of the top 3 worst bosses. So if you made it through this one, I hope you're in it for the long haul, because it is all uphill from here. Many more impossible levels, strange characters, and weird stories await.